Alright, welcome to that special Thursday Q&A that I said I had planned for this Thursday, conveniently enough. I'm actually going to only be responding to asks from two different people in this video. Keeping it short, sweet, and simple. I'm not. They're very long asks. This is why I've been putting it off for so long, because they are very long asks, and they're kind of complex. And they also, at least in part, involve talking about myself, which is a thing that I don't like to do in a way that's not horribly disparaging. And so, anyway, here we are. I'm finally getting around to doing it. I'm going to start with one from, I'm going to call you Darren, because I'm not really sure how to pronounce that whole thing. I'm sure it's supposed to be several words strung together, but I'm not really sure which words they are, and I'm not even going to try. So first question, hey AJ, Loki, I have a few asks to send. I've actually responded to several of these already. The rest of these I say is specifically because I wanted to talk about them in a Q&A, so the rest of you guys would be more sure to see them. You answer as many as you want, or if you do a general Q&A anytime soon, you could save them, which is kind of what I did. My first is, how are you doing in this moment in life? I'm really good, actually. The only thing that's kind of bugging me right now is, and this is going to sound kind of baggy, and I guess it kind of is, I haven't actually been hit by the Made for Children flagging thing, but ever since that was implemented, I've not been bringing in as much revenue, and it really sucks. And I have other means of acquiring funds, and I have a good support network, but I'm still trying to get to a point where I'm self-sufficient with just this channel. And I mean, granted, I'm still pretty far off, but I'm facing major setbacks now in terms of my AdSense revenue. There have been months where it's been a real possibility that I wouldn't get over the payment threshold of $100. And for those who don't know, if you don't get over the payment threshold of $100, instead of sending you money, they bank it until the next month, or until the next time that the money you make plus what's banked is $100 or more. And then they still wait until regular payday, which is like the 21st of the month. It really sucks. I hate it a lot. And so I guess I'm asking for you guys to pledge on Patreon or make one-time donations to my PayPal or my Coffee if you want to support the channel. I am still planning to update the Patreon. I ended up deciding to update a whole bunch of stuff. Like, there's a whole bunch of new stuff coming to the channel relatively soon. So I'm just waiting to update all of it at once, I guess is the best way of putting it. So I don't blame you guys if you want to wait until that happens. But if you're like on the verge and you need that extra push of incentive, maybe the promise of things to come can act as that. I don't know. Help me out if you feel like it, is what I'm asking. Otherwise, I'm really good. Like I'm still surviving, right? It's not like it's an emergency that I need extra funds, right? I'll let you guys know if I ever actually have an emergency situation. But I'm doing really good. My anxiety stuff and my depression stuff, it's still a thing, but I'm managing it really well lately. And I don't know, like there's horrible shit going on in the world right now, and I'm affected by it. But I'm also doing good personally. It's a weird juxtaposition. Like, I almost feel bad about it, you know? But, like, personally, I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. I'm actually going to skip back to an earlier set of asks that I got from someone else. I'll put their name up here. And I'm going to read this entire ask chain before I talk about any of this. And I'm just going to say, I mean no ill will towards you. I'm going to call you Ink. I mean no ill will towards you, Ink. I just think you are very, very wrong, like, to the point of being borderline harmful in terms of these opinions here. So I'm going to read these out. I watched your She-Ra review, and that's the She-Ra Season 4 review, by the way. I would like to make the argument that Catra shouldn't be redeemed. I know you believe that she should be, but I respectfully ask that you hear out all my points just like what you wanted in your response to JXE. Which I might be doing another response to JXE soon. It's gonna be real fun if it happens. And by fun, I mean absolutely horrible. I don't know. We'll see. I would like to start off by saying I recognize that Catra is a victim of abuse. Alright. So right there, I'm going to stop for a second. Right there, you don't. Because either that or you don't understand what that means. Or the degree to which she's been abused in the show. Because if you did, you wouldn't make the rest of the arguments you make here. I'm sorry. And many other things. However, this just makes her a sympathetic villain. Season 3 made it very clear that Catra had crossed the line of no return. By activating the portal, she willingly almost destroyed all of Etheria, attempted mass genocide. And we also can't say she's like Peridot, because Season 4 puts her essentially in control of the Horde. She is no longer just a follower in this regime. You also mentioned in your review that you imagine many people were dying in the war. With Catra as strategist and pseudo-leader, my inner grammar Nazis coming out. That's not how you spell pseudo. All of the deaths caused by the Horde would be directly or indirectly her fault. You could say that of literally any soldier involved in literally any war. Finally, at the end of Season 4, while Catra does save Glimmer's life, she is more trying to align herself with Horde Prime. You need me. In quotes. I have sympathy for her motivations, but she has done too many bad things and crossed too many lines. Now let's put these actions in a real-world scenario. If someone tried to commit mass genocide because they were a victim of abuse, do you think that person should get redeemed? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Especially when they are still submerged beneath the power structure which exerted that abusive control over them in the first place. Because you say here that Catra was effectively in command of the Horde. But she wasn't. Hordak was still there. The only reason she was allowed as much control as she had is because her goals still aligned with his. If she had tried to do anything that was against his specific goals, the rest of the Horde would have gone to Hordak, and he would have overruled her at the least. We literally see that when he realizes that her goals weren't in line with his, i.e. she was betraying him pretty consistently, and he literally tried to kill her. Like, I'm not saying that she should just be straight up forgiven for everything that she's done. I'm saying that because she is an abuse victim who is still trapped within the power structure, or was trapped within the power structure, which caused that abuse, brainwashed by them to think the same way as they do, that she deserves the chance. And yes, I do think that that would carry over into a real-world scenario. Because you also say that she attempts genocide, but she didn't, though. Because obviously she didn't believe that that's what the portal was going to do. She thought it was just false intel from her enemies, an attempt to get her to stop using the portal. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used it, because it would have killed her too. That was literally part of the warning that she was given. Like, yes, trying to use the portal to bring reinforcements for her side into the war was wrong, because her side was in the wrong in the war. But she did not attempt genocide. She just attempted to do a thing which could have caused genocide. And I recognize that it's difficult to see the distinction there, but it's a matter of intent. It's the difference between accidentally hitting someone with your car when they're walking somewhere that they shouldn't be, or just the street sucks or something, and there's like a blind turn or whatever, and like going out and planning to hit someone with your car and then hitting them. And I also don't agree with what you said that she only stepped out to save Glimmer's life as an attempt to get in with Horde Prime, because she didn't need to do that to get in with Horde Prime. She didn't have to tell him that Glimmer was one of the keys to a great power, and she didn't even need to tell him after the fact, after he like killed Glimmer or whatever, that she knew about that great power. What she actually did in that scene was step out and vouch for Glimmer, which means now if Glimmer does anything against Horde Prime's specific wishes or goals, he's going to hold Catra responsible too. And they gave each other that little look at the end, making it clear that the intention of the scene was that she was putting her trust in Glimmer, and I definitely think that that's because of what happened immediately previous to that scene when Glimmer found her at her lowest. I think that was supposed to imply that whether she's fully articulated it to herself or not, Catra understands now how wrong she's been this entire time. Like, she's going to have to put it in context, and that's why Glimmer's there, to help her put it in context, but I definitely think that that's what the implication of that scene was supposed to be. It wasn't that Catra was using Glimmer to get in with Horde Prime. We don't even know for sure that Catra couldn't have found some way to hide from Horde Prime and his forces, or that she wouldn't have normally tried that, because like she's this super stealthy character, right? Wouldn't her first instinct have been to try and hide somewhere on Horde Prime's giant ship until she could get back down to the planet and join her people, rather than vouch for one of her enemies? That just doesn't make sense as her motivation. It doesn't make sense that she was just using Glimmer. But if you look at that scene with the assumption that she was trying to keep Glimmer alive, then suddenly it all makes sense. Because Glimmer is only alive because Catra vouched for her. Something which, again, from a tactical point of view, was a bad idea for Catra to do. Like, I want to be absolutely clear here. I don't even think Hordak is undeserving of redemption. Because it looks like he was just as abused and just as brainwashed and just as manipulated as Catra was by Horde Prime. Both of them are abuse victims, trapped within a system that wouldn't allow them to be anything but good soldiers, that brought them up to believe that the words of their superiors, that the will of their superiors was everything. What choice did either of them have, given that that was their situation? They could have died, I guess. They could have let the other members of the Horde kill them so that they wouldn't have to do terrible things for the Horde anymore. But that's assuming that they even had the capacity to understand that what they were doing was fundamentally wrong, which I'm arguing they didn't because of all the brainwashing. And I've seen people draw the comparison between this and, like, Nazi soldiers. People who weren't really immersed in the upper level Nazi political stuff, who could have theoretically deserted and gotten away and left and not taken part in all the horrible things that Nazi Germany did. But it's not a one-to-one comparison at all, because the Nazi soldiers weren't literally raised in a militant version of the Nazi Party. And I think why this upsets me so much and why I find these opinions to be so harmful is because if we can't forgive someone, real or fictional, for doing horrible things in the name of the only family that they've ever known, people who have literally brainwashed them to believe terrible things and to do terrible things, then who can we forgive? Like, forgiveness is important. And I don't just mean, like, forgiveness of celebrities who made a mistake 12 years ago and have grown as people. Like, there are, like, admittedly probably not as extreme as we've seen with the Horde, but there are real-life examples of things like this happening. Kids who are brought up in extreme religious groups, for example, who say and do harmful things that genuinely harm real people because they don't understand that what they're doing is wrong. And you say here in the last of these, I'll go ahead and read it. I also understand that She-Ra is a cartoon, not real life, but you've said multiple times that you like it when cartoons cover real-world problems. Catra has crossed too many lines, and every time before that she was given a chance to switch sides, she refused. She thought she was in the right. Like, Adora was different because, I mean, Catra's got a whole bunch of psychological stuff piled on top of all of that brainwashing. That's the abuse that I talk about when I talk about the character. She was also beaten down to the point that she compulsively seeks validation because it's the only way she's been able to survive with her sanity intact. Of course she's not going to switch sides. She's not going to switch sides to the side that took her best friend away from her, which, from her perspective, brainwashed her best friend into betraying her and the rest of their family. And to go back to that same, extremist, fundamentalist, religious example, look at kids from, the Westboro Baptist Church or something, for example. They genuinely believe that going to pride events or going to soldiers' funerals and chanting hate, real hate, is for the good of everyone, because they believe that only certain people get to enter paradise. We've seen examples of horde propaganda in the show. They propagandize like crazy. That's part of the brainwashing I talked about. I just think you're fundamentally underestimating how damaged the average horde soldier is. Adora was only able to escape it so easily because, one, she had a magic sword calling out to her, and two, she wasn't beaten down so much because she was treated as a privileged person within that group. She had more of an out built into the way that they treated her. I really disagree with your opinion here. And again, I apologize for being so harsh. I again mean no ill will towards you at all. I don't know. I almost said I'd like to see you interact with someone in real life who has been through something like what Catra has been through, but I don't actually want that because I don't want anybody to have actually gone through what Catra's gone through. But I'd like to see if something like that did exist. Maybe they do, I don't know. If something like that did exist, I'd like to see you look them in the eye, hear their story firsthand, and then tell them that they don't deserve a chance. Moving on from that to equally complicated, but hopefully not quite so passionately negative things. We're going to go back to some of Darren's questions here. This first one, I don't remember if there was context for this one or not. There might have been additional context to this one. If there was, I apologize. I'm just going to answer it as it. I'm actually going to paraphrase what it is and then put it up for you guys here. It's talking about the Death Stranding, the recent Kojima game, and how there's... You guys have probably heard about this before. There's I think it's like a settlement in the game where the people there are characterized as asexual, but instead they're celibate. They're people who have chosen not to have sex, or they're too distracted to reproduce. I don't know exactly. I've read the screen cap everybody's been putting up, but I don't know the context of the game because I haven't played the game. But to my understanding, it grossly mischaracterizes asexuality as asexuality, and a lot of people had a lot of problems with it because that kind of thing can be genuinely harmful. And I'm not going to lie, despite the fact that I have a very personal stake in those kinds of mischaracterizations, being asexual myself, I kind of didn't really follow the whole controversy very much. People seem to be talking about it a lot. I figured everybody else had kind of got it, and it just kind of it made me feel down because I was really looking forward to that game, and now I don't think I'll ever play it. But specifically, Darren asked about Death of the Author here, or at least you mentioned Death of the Author. I'm not actually sure what you were asking with this one, so I'm just gonna do my best to guess. But a lot of people have been wondering since the game came out if that gross mischaracterization represents Kojima's actual views on asexual people. And I think what Darren is implying here is that you'd like to know whether or not I think we should overlook Kojima's possible harmful views and take the game at face value. And I think, yeah, definitely. And I definitely don't think again, I'm sure you guys have seen the screenshot. If not, I'll try to remember to find it and put it up here. But it's like a dossier on this settlement. And it's implied that the asexual attitude, the celibate attitude of the people in this place is going to lead to the downfall of that civilization. And it's just laughable to me. Like, asexuality, actual asexuality as a legitimate sexuality, because that's what it is never going to lead to the downfall of any civilization. First of all, it's enough of a minority that would never happen. But also, like, all that asexuality means is that you don't have, like, sexual attraction, or you have a lesser degree of sexual attraction than other people. It's not like people who are asexual don't have sex. And it's not like they don't have sex in particular when they want to have children. Like, asexual people can still want to have kids. It's just absolutely ludicrous. I think that's the other reason why I didn't really dwell on it too much, is because it was so absolutely stupid that I didn't actually expect it to genuinely influence anyone's actual views towards the negative. But I can certainly understand why people were bothered by it, and I was also bothered by it. Again, was going to play that game, now I'm not. And the rest of these deal with asexuality to one degree or another, but also my book. I'm actually going to just read these through, and then I'll discuss and reply to the relevant stuff. But away from that, I am absolutely in love with the concept of your book, drawing from action anime where people shout their attacks. Even laid-back, creative writing teachers will warn of mixing mediums when writing, saying books and certain TV movie tropes and framing devices don't mix. I always thought and knew that in the time where nothing is really new, you should try to write the content that you love and desire to see more of in a certain way / medium. I respect you a lot for that. I appreciate that. I literally just wanted my characters to do cool anime shit. I mean, I know you basically say that here, but that's why I did it. So thank you for getting it, I guess. But yeah, that's a thing in my books. My characters have cool superpower anime fights and call their attacks and stuff. And it's also that I can use winning those fights as, like, synonyms isn't the right word. So that by defeating their enemies, my characters can symbolically overcome their own flaws and whatnot. Like, I could have written roughly this same story about roughly these same characters and had them be like aspiring chefs or something, you know? Just so long as they had something to aspire to, something to get better at, the story would have worked. I just happened to choose cool anime fights, because, as you implied here, that's the thing I'd like to see more of. As for mixing mediums, not mixing mediums, like being staunchly against mixing mediums is bullshit. Like, I will admit that some authors shouldn't mix certain mediums because they don't know enough about them. Like, there are certain types of stories that, at least as I am now, I would never even dream of trying to write. But, I mean, if you know enough about the mediums that you're mixing, and you feel like you can make it work, I think it's stupid not to try, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're passionate about. So related to writing what you want to see, I love that your protagonist is asexual. I have an asexual protagonist in the book that I'm trying to write. I'd actually like to see that once you start to get it off the ground. If you need a beta, I'm here. But I am fearful of what people will think of my character in relation to myself. I'd probably be generally described as gay, but more just demisexual, because actual physical attraction, even then, is rare, you know? I wanted a character who pursues romantic connections but without all that connotation, because I want someone very rarely in that way. This next bit's asking which character cues, verbal tells, that kind of stuff that I'd put into my character to help identify them as asexual. I'm not going to read the whole thing out. I will say I appreciate you sharing so much in your asks. Like, I'm only just barely comfortable enough sharing stuff like this about myself in my own videos. In terms of how because my character is not the kind of person who would even know what asexuality is at the start of the story. So until she had reached the point where that was a thing that she would have, like, actively learned about herself, I really only just hinted at it, I guess, is the best way of putting it. And I did so by just using her inner dialogue to point out that she had never really felt attraction to anybody. Like, that's all I did. Like, I'm struggling not to go into more detail. Like, there's a situation in the first book where she starts to feel something for somebody, but, like, she contextualizes to herself that she's still not feeling the sexual side of that. And then it becomes more overt later on, because there's someone new in her life at that point who would be able to help her understand that part of her identity better. You also mentioned that your character is ADHD. Here, I'd actually like to ask you the same question back about how you portray your character being ADHD, because I don't know, I don't see that kind of representation very often, and it would just be of interest to me to see how you go about that, I guess. And yes, it is stated outright, but again, not immediately. I think my character finally puts it into words. My main character finally puts it into words in trying to think, because this is stuff I've drafted. It's going to be the 4th book in the series. Yeah. It doesn't really come up much before that. And then, like, says it outright. Like, actually uses the term in the next book after that, if I'm remembering correctly. Because, again, these are just drafts at this point. I also want to bring it back and mention that you say you're fearful of what people will think of the character in relation to yourself, the character being asexual. I mean, I can't stop you from worrying about something like that. But I would say don't. Like, a lot of writers write a lot of themselves into their stories. I don't think there's anything wrong with an author writing a character into a story specifically because they want to see representation that's relevant to themselves, if that makes any sense at all. And finally, so I gather that writing your character as ace in the area story type of special interest is deliberate so as to finally see a person like yourself in that role. Yep. Pretty much. Like, there's been more ace rep lately, but yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. But isn't so tellingly sad that you never really see LGBTQA+ in title roles of nerd stuff, and whenever we rarely do, there's backlash, partially due to the fact that studios never announce or display the spot initial meeting or release of these characters' properties. So it always comes off as it might be an afterthought or for clout. I mean, yeah, any kind of backlash towards representation bothers me a lot and bums me out a lot. Like, my book's not gonna get a movie deal, let's be clear. It's never gonna happen. But if it did, like, the characters' identities remaining part of them in any adaptation would be important enough to me that if someone tried to remove those identities from those characters, that'd be a deal breaker. Straight up. Because there are other characters in my books who people might take similar kinds of offense to. And, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did go out of my way to include characters who underrepresented groups. That was a thing that I specifically thought to do when I was writing these books. But that doesn't mean I'm fishing for clout, or that it was an afterthought, or that I'm trying to blindside anybody, or anything. I'm just trying to create a realistic group of characters who have realistic identities. Because, like, my cast of characters is pretty big. I have several primary characters. Then I have a large cast of secondary characters who all have some impact or another on the story. It only makes sense that some of them would fit under that LGBTQ umbrella. I don't know, I could actually go on for a very long time bitching about how I'm just so disappointed that there's still so much backlash every time an LGBTQ character shows up, especially in nerd media. But, I mean, this video is already going on for really freaking long, so I should probably wrap it up. I know you're probably a little disappointed by my answer to how I, let's use the word telegraphed, how I telegraphed that my character was ace. I guess if you want to discuss it more directly, message me. We can talk about it like back and forth or whatever. Like you mentioned, verbal tells. Literally all I do in the first book to, again, hint isn't the best word, but let's use it anyway, to hint that my main character is asexual, is that when she finds herself attracted to someone, she still makes note that it's not in a sexual capacity. And I think that works. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that will be a thing that people criticize about the story once the book drops. But I think it works. I think it works pretty well. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end this particular Q&A video. This went on for about exactly as long as I expected that it would. Which is very, very long. It's to me a very, very long video. I apologize to everybody who doesn't really like sitting through long videos, but I wanted to get all of this done all at once, address all of this stuff all at once, because Darren and Inkling, is it just Inkling GMR? Is that what it is? I don't know. Inkling Gamer, maybe? I don't know. I'm always nervous about butchering people's names, even screen names. Both of them have been waiting for so long for replies to these questions. I felt obligated to get answers out, get responses out as soon as I had the chance. And this is as soon as I had the chance to handle all this. Anyway, if you would like to discuss any of the things that I brought up in this video in a respectful way, I'm going to add that as a prerequisite. Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over on my Discord, link in the description. And if you have any questions that you would like me to answer in the next Q&A, there's a Q&A section on the Discord. You can leave comments in the comment section of this video, or you can send me asks over on my Tumblr. Those are all fantastic ways to get my attention. It just might be a while before I finally compile them into an actual response video. Either way, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.